It was during the new leader Geisel's term from 1975 onwards that the Brazilian military dictatorship took their interference in football up to a whole new level. They remodeled the national team to appear more militaristic instead of the flamboyant brilliance it was always known for. Flamboyant behaviour doesn't go down well in military dictatorships, unless it's their own flamboyance perhaps. Brazilian teams had always been known for samba soccer, and the emphasis that this puts on improvisation, individual effort, and irreverence. These qualities that football fans tend to enjoy stood in direct opposition to those that the government hoped to instill in the nation. The government therefore had to make changes. They needed a team that displayed discipline and physical strength, like a good loyal army force, not a travelling dance show. It simply wasn't within their interests as they attempted to control and contain their vibrant population. At this stage, Brazil actually chose a former army captain to be the new manager of their national team. Claudio Coutinho likened his squad to a light armoured unit, and he adorned the walls of the training ground with military slogans and pro-government banners. Bodyguards were used to prevent players from speaking openly with the press. They would have felt enough pressure to keep their mouths shut anyway. Pele has openly admitted he was fearful to speak out during his career. Despite its best efforts, the government's attempt to shackle Joga Bonito failed. There was no World Cup glory in 1974 or 1978, and the public were unhappy with the enforced militarization of the squad. From the moment the beautiful game began to catch hold in South America, Brazil's rulers saw football as a means to consolidate power over the people, and also as a way to construct a particular vision of nationhood and a sense of pride amongst the people. Football and politics in Brazil, therefore, like in many parts of the world, are intrinsically linked, and now they probably always will come hand in hand, as certain events this year have already shown us. For all its wonder and beauty, Brazil has had its problems too, long before the dictatorship and since that period as well. A century ago, for example, the Brazilian president of the time, Epitácio Pessoa, sought to ban black players from the national team. And in more recent times, ex-leader Jair Bolsonaro stayed quiet as his followers stormed and damaged government buildings in a violent protest. Many dressed in the shirt of the national football team, a nod to the ideas of previous leaders. Bolsonaro and his supporters often wore the Brazilian shirt at rallies in an attempt to appropriate it as an emblem of their patriotic far-right movement, and to an extent, they succeeded in doing so. Even now, after the term of Jair Bolsonaro, some Brazilians have elected not to wear the yellow Brazil jersey, in case they are associated with the same movement. However, on the other hand, the new leader of the country has insisted that the country reclaims its famous shirt as a symbol for all in support of the country, their team, their colours, and nothing more. The left-wing leader, Lula da Silva, has tried to detoxify the shirt with such comments, and he also made it clear that he would be wearing a yellow shirt to support Brazil during the World Cup. The green and yellow is not a candidate, it's not a party, he said. Under Bolsonaro, Brazil had become more divided and politicized than at any point in its democratic era, and many Brazilians hoped that a sixth World Cup victory, o Hexa, might go some way towards healing some of those issues by rallying in unity around football, perhaps even reclaiming the national shirt from the reactionaries in the political tide. Of course, after a painstaking penalty shootout defeat to Croatia, the World Cup success did not happen, and instead, the national jersey has again been filmed plenty amongst some horrible scenes in the country's protests. But hopefully for Brazil, recent events in the capital are the beginning of the end of that movement, with many violent protesters arrested. Hopefully the shirt will in fact belong to the people, all people, once again. Their mission to find unity through football continues, and the country will already have its eyes on victory at the World Cup in 2026 in the USA, Canada, and Mexico. 3 years ago, when Brazil won the Copa America on home soil, the then Brazil boss Tite's acknowledgement of Bolsonaro during the victory ceremony was interpreted as its own small act of resistance. Unlike previous coaches, he had pledged not to visit the president in Brasilia if he had won the World Cup. This would have broken a tradition that stretches back to their first victory in 1958. Tite is no longer the Brazil manager following their Qatar 2022 quarterfinal exit, but his pre-tournament promise struck a chord with many, and though Bolsonaro isn't quite a dictator like those of the 70s, Tite did take a stand here, something not for the faint-hearted. Aside from that, Tite has understandably refused to expand on his own political allegiances, as Pele always did back in his playing days. "I'm not going to carry this battle," he said in Sao Paulo in October. "I will vote secretly, and I have my ideas very clear." On the other hand, and in stark contrast to Tite, it seemed like many Brazilian football stars had been Bolsonaro supporters. Some reports suggested that those who came out in support may have been rewarded for doing so. Neymar, for example, offered his endorsement to Bolsonaro and even promised to dedicate his first World Cup goal to the outgoing president. Some of Brazil's top defenders, Thiago Silva and Dani Alves, have also been open in their support for Bolsonaro in the past, along with a long list of some of Brazil's biggest ever football names, including Romario, Ronaldinho and Rivaldo. In fact, only one of Brazil's 2022 World Cup squad openly came out on the other side of the debate, Richarlison. Though he didn't explicitly express his support for another candidate, he denounced a lot of policies of Bolsonaro's government, and the timing and current political climate would suggest that he therefore is on the other side of the vote. The attacking player scored one of the goals of the tournament in Qatar and was a key player for Brazil, but he has also been outspoken on his views. Many thought that this may cause a bit of a rift in the Brazil dressing room, but Richarlison's form and his obvious camaraderie with his teammates would suggest it didn't make any difference. The Tottenham Hotspur player has been vocal on a number of social justice issues in recent months. In the elections of 1985, a new president was to be appointed. This time, the election was being contested between civilian candidates for the first time since the 1960s, and eventually it was won by the opposition. 3 years later, in 1988, a new constitution was passed and Brazil officially returned to democracy. In 2014, almost 30 years after the regime collapsed, finally, the Brazilian military recognized the atrocities committed during the years of the dictatorship. Similarly astonishing admission also came from the US. In May 2018, the American government released a memorandum written by Henry Kissinger, dating back to April 1974, when he was serving as Secretary of State. This memorandum stated that the military dictatorship in Brazil had been completely aware of the illegal and unlawful murder of many dissidents. The document went on to estimate that 434 people were killed or went missing, and that 20,000 people had been tortured. This, of course, is an official figure, and in reality, it could be much higher. Due to negligence of the military dictatorship too, thousands of indigenous Brazilian people passed away. For Brazil, hopefully on and off the pitch, there is a lot of hope and a lot to look forward to. 2023 will be a year where they will look to stabilise their politics once more, and in 2024 there is a Copa America to be contested. They will no doubt look on as far as 2026 too, where there is a World Cup to be played in North America. At that stage, the most storied national team of all time will be looking for their 6th World Cup title. A lot of the current squad that saw them picked as 2022 World Cup favourites will have 4 more years of top level experience. They may well be favourites again, but at that stage they will be 24 years without a World Cup title. Will they be able to handle the pressure? We'll find out. Let us know in the comments if you knew about the crazy history of politics and football in Brazil, and stay tuned for more videos just like this one.